What's up YouTube? As you can see from the intro, the new bike on the channel is this 2023 Yamaha TW200. I have a lot of adventures planned for this bike that range from riding on single track and OHV parks to moto camping and even some longer adventure rides. Before we can do that though, we need to get this thing set up with some accessories to both protect and optimize it for adventure riding. That means replacing the stock skid plate, putting on some handguards and a rear rack, bigger foot pegs, bar risers, and a few other accessories. With that said, let's jump into the garage and get this thing set up. Alright guys, so we're in the garage and we've got all of our parts here ready to install. Now I'm not going to cover every step of how to install these components, but we are going to talk about what we're installing and why we're installing it. Then we're going to breeze through the installation process and we're going to take a look at the final setup at the very end. So with that said, let's jump right into it. The first things we're going to put on are our OHV park sticker and a phone mount. So it's just a rock form mount on a ram body. Nothing real crazy or in need of explanation. After that, we have some Tusk aluminum 15 mil 7/8 bar risers. These are going to improve the ergonomic situation since the foot peg to handlebar distance is not very far, but I'm a little concerned that they may not be quite enough. So we're going to give it a try and see how it goes. For reference, I'm 5'9", and I am quite hunched over on this bike when standing in stock form. So either way these will help, but we'll see if it's enough or if I end up swapping them out later. After that, we have a Tusk billet aluminum folding shift lever. The factory shift lever is pretty bendy and doesn't fold, so this will allow it to fold if it hits a hard object, and just the body of it's much more rigid, so this will be a really good upgrade for durability. After that, we've got a set of Tusk billet aluminum foot pegs. Now these are substantially larger in surface area than the factory foot pegs. The TW200 factory foot pegs are literally the smallest pegs I have ever seen on a factory bike by a long shot. And I'll show you a side-by-side of what that looks like when we get to installing these. It is pretty wild. So I'm really excited to try these out. These should make it a lot more comfortable to stand on the bike for longer periods of time, whether we're off-roading or just on a long ride. I'm really excited for that. After that, I have a JT rear sprocket. This is a 47 tooth. The factory rear sprocket is a 50 tooth. So this is going to lower our RPM when we're moving at higher speeds, but not so much that it's going to compromise our torque and ability to get over obstacles or up hills off-road. Now the drivetrain on this bike is really new. It barely has any miles on it at all. And that's going to allow me to just swap the rear sprocket since the rest of the drivetrain isn't bedded together already. If you were installing this on a bike that already had a substantial number of miles on, I would tell you that you also need to swap out the chain and swap out the front sprocket. One thing to note, the factory chain on this does not have a master link, so you can't take the link apart, pull some links out, and put it back together. So what I'll end up doing is just running the adjuster about halfway through its adjustment to get the chain to the correct tension with this smaller sprocket. So just to be aware that you might not get as much life out of your chain because you're going to start halfway through the adjustment cycle. After that, we have a J&S Engineering LED headlight conversion. I've seen really good things about this. It's got great reviews. And it's pretty much plug and play, no crazy wiring to be done, so I'm really excited to get this installed and check it out. After that, I have a set of double take Enduro mirrors. These are the round ones, very similar to what's on the bike factory, but you know, they will fold out of the way when you hit the deck, and they will be much more durable. Finally, we have this Ricochet off-road skid plate. I have run these on several bikes. They're super durable, they're really simple, easy to install, and I absolutely love them. This is such a great upgrade. Now on a lot of dirt bikes like the KLX I just came off of, it has a cradle frame that runs underneath the motor that provides some level of protection. But on the TW200, the motor is a stressed member of the frame, and there is no frame that runs underneath it. It kind of just hangs down there as the lowest point, and the factory skid plate is essentially aluminum foil, so it's not really going to protect you against anything. Basically, it just keeps like dirt spatter off the motor, and that's about it. So this is a really great upgrade. I would highly recommend these for anyone that's thinking about it or that wants to take their TW off-road, which I imagine is probably most TW riders. Now, following that, we have these Acerbis wraparound hand guards. These are really great at protecting your hands and also protecting your levers from snapping. I highly recommend them, and I'm super excited to get this set on, which should match the bike pretty well since it's black and white on a gray and black bike, so it's pretty exciting. Now the last piece I have here is back here, and it's this Tusk rear rack. One of the best things that I like about this is that not only does it have a very large platform, but it ties into the rear foot peg mounts, which helps take some of the stress off of the subframe, and it gives you a little bit more ability to carry some weight for when we're moto camping or just on a longer trip, without compromising the strength and the rigidity of the rear rack or the subframe down here. I know that subframe cracking is a known issue on the TW200s, and I want to avoid that as much as possible, so this is the rack we decided to go with, as I think it'll give us the best opportunity to carry a substantial payload without cracking that rear rack. There is one other thing to note here, and that is, you may have noticed in the intro that the bike already has a seat concept seat on. It did not come with that. I bought the bike brand new with the stock seat. It just happened to be such that with the filming schedule and all that, I ended up taking that seat and having it recovered first. So I did ride on the factory seat, and I will say that compared to my previous KLX 230, the factory seat on the TW is just head and shoulders above in terms of comfort. That said, I have some pretty long rides planned for this bike, and I didn't want to use the stock seat for those, so I upgraded to the seat concepts. And I gotta say, after only one short ride on it, it is super comfortable. We'll see if that holds true for longer rides, but having already had experience with seat concepts, I'm fairly certain that it's going to be quite comfortable. And on this bike in particular, it's very thick, and it's not cushy, but well supported. So I'm super excited about that, and to get this build done. Let's jump into the build process, get all of our parts on, and we'll come back at the end. All right, guys, well, we got everything installed, albeit with a little bit more massaging than I had originally anticipated. And I learned a few interesting things along the way. The first of which is that the chain on this bike actually does have a master link. That's not been my experience with stock chains, and I didn't see one on first glance, but on closer inspection, there is in fact a master link on the chain on this bike. So if you're putting on a smaller rear sprocket like I did, and you want to take a link or two out, you can do that. Another thing I learned that was pretty interesting, this JNS headlight is plug and play. You can plug it in, you'll have low beam, you'll have high beam, it will work fine, but it has a running light built into it that does actually require you to wire it in separately. So I haven't done that. I just plugged it in for time's sake, and I will go back later and get that running light working. But for right now, we're just gonna leave it as is. Another really important thing to know, when I installed the Ricochet skid plate, and this is an experience I've never had with a Ricochet skid plate before, you have to modify the bike a little bit to make it work. So the original skid plate has a thin wire loop that it fits through on the back, coming off the frame just behind the motor. So in order to get the new skid plate on, you have to cut that loop or beat it out of the way with a hammer. Again, not something that I've experienced with a Ricochet skid plate before, but apparently that's how it is on this model per the directions for the skid plate. So if you're going to install one on your bike, just be aware that that is a thing that you'll have to do. So if you're not comfortable with permanently modifying the bike in any way, you'll want to know that before you order a Ricochet skid plate and install it on your TW. Not a big deal though. As far as I see it, I don't think anyone would ever go back to the original skid plate. I can't see why you would do that, since it is honestly just so chintzy and flimsy. All right, last thing I'm going to mention here is the handguards. So the left side handguard went on just fine. I didn't have any issue with that. The right side handguard, because I'm mounting it on the stock handlebars, was actually pretty difficult to get in place. I ended up taking this mount here and flipping it upside down so that it would clear the brake cable and still mount to the handlebar without running into this crossbar. And even then, I really had to do some finagling to get this thing in place the way I wanted it. I think that later I might switch the bar setup and go to like a fat bar from Pro Taper. I've typically installed these Cherubies on Pro Taper bars in the past, and I've had pretty good experience with it being fairly easy to set up. This was one of the more difficult ones for me to get situated appropriately so that it'll clear the lever and not stick the throttle and do all that kind of stuff. So you can do it. I did manage to get it in place. It just took more finagling than I typically would experience with an aftermarket bar. So that's just for you to know. Other than that, everything else went really simple, really fast. I didn't have any issues. And now I think the bike is pretty well set up. So I think this is everything that we're gonna need to get some basic adventures done, do some moto camping, that kind of thing. So hopefully the next time you see this bike, we'll be out on the trail or in the mud or at a campsite. Not really sure what it's gonna be. We'll figure that out later. For now, this is gonna be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.